I guess it's like a pyramid. You pick up a pencil, you pick up a marker, or you start painting, and you just start making marks. You start moving the materials around and experiencing them. But underneath, there's all sorts of stuff unwinding and coming out and revealing itself. And so, yeah, pretty much arts therapy you could do with a pen on the back of an envelope, or you could, sit down in a class with lots of, fabulous materials.
Welcome back to the You Need a Counselor podcast. This is a show presented by Heart and Solutions Counseling Agency. We release new episodes every Sunday at 5 p.m. Central and encourage you to batch up that laundry, put away the dishes, plan for the week ahead, or do any other task that might seem daunting while you give our show a listen. You might just be encouraged to call your therapist, connect with this week's guest, or seek out those services you've been considering for a while but haven't made the commitment to yet. If you are in the state of Iowa and are in need of mental or behavioral health counseling, give us a call at 1-800-531-4236. Enjoy the show.
Hello, and welcome back to the You Need a Counselor podcast. My name is Dr. Julie Johnson. I'm the president and founder here at Heart and Solutions, mental health and behavioral health counseling here in Iowa.
I'm Chrissa Hunt. I am our vice president in charge of the behavioral health department. And this is our podcast, You Need a Counselor. So we are designed for people curious about counseling, but have barriers keeping them from experiencing the benefits of counseling. Our mission is to share stories about counseling, good, bad, and indifferent, and spread the message that everyone can benefit from mental health and behavioral health counseling services.
Our guest today is an art therapist practitioner. She is an author of several books. She is also the creator of the Art Therapy app, and she is joining us from Australia. She does creative art sessions in groups online. So anywhere that you are in the world, if you're interested in mindful art therapy, definitely listen to this episode and reach out to our guest today. We've got Susan Day joining us today, a fellow animal lover. We're so excited to have you here today, Susan.
Well, thank you very much for having me. It's wonderful to meet you all.
Thank you so much. So now, what is art therapy or arts therapy? We really haven't had an art therapist on the show before, so we're really excited to learn about this with you.
Oh, that's exciting. It's simple. It's incredibly simple. When I was studying, I thought, I'd be sitting in class going, oh gosh, is this it? Is this all we have to do? But I guess it's like a pyramid. You pick up a pencil, you pick up a marker, or you start painting, and you just start making marks. You start moving the materials around and experiencing them. But underneath, there's all sorts of stuff unwinding and coming out and revealing itself. And so, yeah, pretty much arts therapy you could do with a pen on the back of an envelope, or you could, sit down in a class with lots of, fabulous materials and stickers and glue and and paper and scissors and, I don't know, sculpturing stuff and painting and music and also. So the arts, I use arts with an S with my business name because I like to encompass every aspect of art, whether it's journaling, collage, sculpture, and the traditional, I guess, that people mainly think about is painting. Yeah. So it's expressing yourself through exploring your emotions, and maybe just working through a few issues to begin with, but then sometimes we need to get down at a lower level and work on some deeper things as well.
So I'm sure people are listening and wondering, like, what if I'm terrible at art? Would art therapy still be good for me? And what would you say to those people? Like, do you need to be good at art? And if not, like, what kind of things can they expect to do in session to, like, if they're not good at art? Like, how can they expect to prepare for sessions?
Oh, well, the rule is that you don't need to one of the big myths, I guess, to do art therapy is you don't need to be artistic. Artistic people are drawn to it, as that's how I found it. But no, if you can hold a pencil, you can do art therapy. That's my rule. And a typical session is just inviting the clients to explore how they're feeling, perhaps think of an issue. And it doesn't have to be a trauma that they're buried deep inside. it could be that the fact that they're just annoyed because they forgot to put the bins out, or something, something like that, something quite simple. And because as you all know, it's all layered deep down inside. And you just, as a therapist, I might watch what colors they choose. I might watch the types of marks they make on the paper. I don't need to, explain to your audience that red jagged lines are, suddenly a sign of anger or deep-seated rage that might be happening. Green circles, for example, on the opposite end, is something that might be thoughtful, contemplative. We're working through this at the moment. And I don't interpret those either, but I might discuss with the client how they're feeling and what's really going on. And we often use a lot of metaphors and analogies and things like that in art therapy. So you might say to someone, okay, what kind of flower do you think you are? And draw it for me. Sort of, and they might talk about their resilience and or although they're feeling very fragile. So like a rose is a beautiful flower, but as soon as you touch it, it falls apart. It's just like the petals go everywhere. So they might be feeling like a rose one day, but the next day they might be feeling like a daisy. They just keep popping up everywhere, and they're resilient, they're tough. So yeah, it changes a lot, as you know. With therapy, we can move around a bit, but it's just, I suppose the other thing I really love about art therapy is you don't need to talk about how you're feeling. So it transcends, it goes past that need to intellectualize what's really going on inside. And you can just sit there and make marks on the paper. And in the meantime, your subconscious is going, oh, I need to do this. I need to get this out. I need to deal with this.
Absolutely. Well, I think what's so important about the misconception, right, that you're talking about with art of like, well, I'm a good artist or I'm a bad artist, and can I do this type of therapy, is that I think as humans, we have such a focus all the time on like producing things, creating things, right? So we're kind of similar to when we're writing for our own therapeutic benefit. We're not focused on writing a book for everybody to read. We're not focused on, writing this to convey a message necessarily to other people. And but with art, I think it can feel so like product outcome driven when we think about art. So when we think about like doing a painting, we think about, well, artists who do paintings and then put them up in museums or sell them or showcase them at shows. And so we tend to think about art as something that we are creating for consumption of other people. And that thinking about art can really stop us or block us from doing art for our own purposes, doing art for the purpose of doing art and expressing ourselves through that art, because it's the process that can be most impactful for ourselves. So when we think about thinking about a famous artist showcasing in a gallery, well, there are thousands and thousands of pieces that person has done for themselves before they get to that piece of, yes, this is what I'm going to showcase to the world or whoever comes to my show. And so I love the focus on, or I would just challenge, that focus on external. I'm creating a project, or I'm creating a product by doing this painting or by coloring this. And I'll say that I've seen it in my daughter. My daughter's 8. And I've seen her kind of go, I think, going through school from like, oh, I'm coloring for fun, to I'm coloring to hang something up, or I'm coloring to complete this design, right? And it is such a different approach to it. So I love that you're highlighting that yeah, we're not creating it necessarily for that external audience. We're creating it to be creating it. And it's very similar, it sounds like, to Sandtray, where your therapist is not saying, oh, well, you put this dragon over here, so that means that you are feeling this way about something. It's more of a, hey, I see that you put this character here, because that character might be a dragon or it might not be a dragon. And if I draw a green circle, that might be a lime or that might be the sun exploding, right? There's as a provider, as a therapist, we're not necessarily interpreting that. We're opening up the space for our clients to interpret it for themselves and to share what that means for them. So I just love that distinction.
Yeah.
It reminds me of one time I did Santray and I had this glass bottle, and I really identified with that glass bottle within the tray. And that has stayed with me for so long throughout my life. And so, art therapy, I know it brings that part of ourselves that might be pre-verbal, and that we might not have the words to be able to express out into the open. So I just think it's a beautiful method of connection. And so you're focusing on mindful arts therapy. So what is the difference between, the arts and the therapy or art therapy that we might see? And then what is your perspective on that makes it that mindful piece?
I think for me, I don't know. I was studying mindfulness when I came across arts therapy. So I don't know I didn't know how to separate them, in a sense. And then it suddenly occurred to me, well, perhaps that's because you can't. So when we're mindful, I always begin with a body scan. My sessions, each of my activity books is a little, and the app, every activity on the app, and there's over 100, starts with a little mindful practice where you just remember to go, oh, I've got to breathe. That's right. Oh, and you just relax and you settle down and you do a bit of a scan and you don't judge or criticize and you go, oh, yep, okay, that's a bit painful. Oh, got it holding a bit of stress there. And then you're mindful on how you use the art materials. So how does a paintbrush feel as opposed to a crayon? And sometimes I will use different materials to enhance a client's experience or maybe challenge it a little bit. So if I get what I call fizzy brain, it's one of my things where my brain just starts ticking overload when I'm in uber creative mode and nothing else matters and I've got this laser focus. And I learned how to come down from that. And a lot of people don't have that experience. So things like gel pens are absolutely beautiful to use. There's something just gorgeous about the way the colors sit, but you have to use them slowly, because they don't work if you try to scribble on them and if you use them too hard. And so to bring down, sometimes I just sit down with a gel pen and just, maybe color or do some really delicate designs. On the other hand, if somebody's mood needs lifting, we're going to look at yellows and oranges and exciting, vibrant colors, and we're going to get the paint out and we're going to splash it. We're just going to move it around. So there's this whole experience, this mindfulness that comes with using art materials. I suppose the most practical one might be sculpting or using clay, modeling clay or Play-Doh, where you really get to, sometimes one of my activities is just picking it up and using it, just moving it around in your hands. And what does that feel like in it? And it's quite it's like sand play in a sense, it's that wonderful sensation that we've lost. When we're adulting and, being an adult, that'll be how boring is being an adult. And you can really get modeling clay and just go to town with it. And I was talking to a lady and she what did she call it? She kind of just took her child, a 3-year-old's modeling clay off her and just said, you color, I'm busy. Because she suddenly was taken back to her childhood and that wonderful sort of sense of freedom. And it was just a beautiful experience. Yeah. So, yeah. And you're right. We don't, and one of the things that I always encourage my clients to have an art journal where they'll create something and then they'll write about it. My art journal looks like something that maybe a 5-year-old has scribbled in, because sometimes I just recently went through a terrible disappointment and I just sat down with these pencils and just drew these lines, and I was working with blues and greens, and then I started doing little circles, and the more I concentrated on that emotion, the smaller the circles were and the more tense they were. And again, that mindfulness of just being, and then I sort of sat back and thought, hang on, where is all this tension sitting in my body, and where do I need to release it from? And yeah, it's a wonderful. I don't know how to separate them, to be honest. So I as you would know, mindful based art therapy is a relatively new practice. But to me, I kind of think mindfulness has always been there. When you study art therapy, you kind of get it. It's always there. And I guess for me, I was looking, okay, when you start a business and you start a practice, you're looking for a point of difference, perhaps. And I just love bringing them both together.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned your app, the art therapy app, and how there's over 100 different activities on there. Can you give us some examples of activities you might find on there? And is it for a specific age group, or can any ages use this app?
It's actually designed for children or preteens, in particular, whenever their parents let them get phones. So, gosh, now you put me on the spot. Where's my phone? No, there's 6 categories. I would encourage anyone, before you start, please read the first. Well, there's actually 8 categories. There's a one before you start category, and there's a how to use the app category, which of course people don't use. They don't read those bits. Because I probably wouldn't either, so it's okay. So there's a category on healing. There's finding peacefulness, discovering your true self, and there's a few others as well. So, and it just basically takes you through what you need to do in the activity. One of them might be one thing I found really important. One of my favorite categories, I guess, is gratitude. And going around for a month and excuse me, and photographing 3 things a day, really close up, like really, really close up. I've got a really fancy phone, and you can get like this far away from anything, and it photographs it beautifully. And it's just that focusing on the small things in life that really matter. Because let's face it, we're I'm not going to be the greatest art therapist in the world, and I'm not going to be the greatest artist in the world, and I'm not really great at anything. And I love to sing. Nobody else loves me to sing, but I really love to sing. But they're the things that bring us joy, and they're the things that we need to be grateful for on all sorts of levels, and and build up your empathy and build up your kindness too. So they're I suppose underneath, they're the things I'm really getting people to become aware of. And sure, we can make a joy box, and we can just find a box and decorate it, and maybe cut out images from a magazine and pop them in there. Things that bring us joy, things that make us feel happy, might be little items or collections or stones or feathers. And like you say, it might be a little glass bottle that you resonate with at some level, and you can open that and use it whenever you like. But what are we really doing? What are we really appreciating? Are we being, it's just to kind of evolve this sort of sense of gratitude, and then transferring that into kindness and empathy. And some of the activities are in the book, but what I did is I transformed them and made them a little bit more complex, or a little bit more interesting. One of my favorite activities is what I call the reverse onion, where you get bits of paper and you write down things you really like about yourself, and then you screw them up in a ball, and then you take the second piece and you wrap that around the first piece, and then the third piece. And I think about 8 times I thought, oh, this is getting really hard, when I tried it at home. But yeah, and then you can, it's like, and then you unwrap it, and you might leave it for a little time period as well, where you go off and you're very busy and you might forget exactly what you wrote. And then it's just that wonderful play with all kinds of materials, where we kind of value ourselves and value our contribution and recognize how unique we are, and then working on that through to just finding a sense of peace and joy, being happy.
Absolutely. I mean, I love these ideas, because you are incorporating so much of that tactile piece of it. And in any type of intervention, a lot of times we think about therapy and we think about our ears, right? And we think about listening, and we think about speaking, but we're really not in traditional talk therapy, there isn't so much of that tactile piece. And what in these examples that onion, I can hear the sound of paper crinkling, right? I can feel what crinkled paper feels like, there's that satisfaction when you step on a dried leaf. That's how crinkly paper can feel sometimes, right? So there are I just really enjoy that, the idea that there are all of those different pieces to how we experience the world. And so, yes, we hear the things and we see the things, but we also feel those things, and we're not always giving cognitive thought, or transferring into our cognitive brains those feelings that we're having. So we're thinking about our emotions, but our physical feelings. And so when you're talking about doing a body scan and checking in with our body and where is that tension, or how does a coffee cup feel in our hands, right? Do we feel the weight of that in our day? That's really where that mindfulness piece comes in, because I've been drinking this cup of coffee since 7 o'clock this morning, right? And until right now, I did not feel the weight of this mug, right? How it feels in my hand. And when you were talking about drawing with different kinds of mediums, absolutely, I can feel how in my brain, my tactile brain, I can feel how drawing with chalk feels totally different than drawing with pastels or oils. It's a wonderful thing to just think about, honestly, and to be mindful about while we're doing it, because it is bringing us so much deeper into that experience that we're having, which again allows us to be in that present moment when we're zoomed in on one thing that we're grateful for. So if I take a photo of my cat, but I take a real close-up photo, right, of part of my cat's face, that again, it slows everything down, and it allows us to be in that moment with that thing that we're grateful for, and to really notice it and to really experience it in a different way than I think we would naturally as we go about our day and do all the things we need to do.
It's absolutely, and and I think artists are quite spoilt like that. Like I've painted my cats and really noticed the shape of their nose, their nostrils, for example, and it's an absolutely beautiful shape. And as an artist, I thought there's so many people that don't experience this, that don't get to look at the details of, we had a cat. He got run over a lot, which was rather unfortunate. And so his name began as Charlie, and then we nicknamed him Speed Bump Charlie. I don't know if you have speed bumps in it, what you call them in America. It was, in the end, and he lived a long. I mean, he was a tough old cat. But I did his portrait once, and I used about 6 different greens. And you think, oh, I'm going to draw the cat, and I'm going to use green, and people are like, what? But deep down in his fur, he was just a grumpy old tabby cat. But yeah, it was more so when he got run over than otherwise. But it was just, he was a shocking cat. Yeah, the worst temper. But we loved him anyway. He did live a very long and happy life, safely inside in the end. But yeah, it was just one of those experiences, and I think people need to, and that, like you say, we're not putting something that's going to hang on the wall. To go back to what we spoke about, yeah, art therapy is not about producing something you may never want to share it with people, and that's one of the biggest barriers I find is people go, oh, I can't show this, I need to rip it up and throw it away. And some of my activities will end with you. Yeah, there's a beautiful one that I'm really bad at origami, so I forced myself to make this. You write a letter to somebody who's caused you trauma, or you don't need to name them, you don't need to name anything, but you kind of express your emotions in words, and then you fold it into a boat, a little origami boat, and then you might set it to sail somewhere, like maybe a river or at the sea. And that's that sense of release and letting it go. There are some art therapy activities where you might burn the letter. And again, it's just that process. It's just what we do. It's that identifying the emotions and not judging, not being critical about how you're feeling about something. So we removing the shame and the guilt and just saying, you know what, I feel really crappy about this. It's just this thing happened and it's just awful and it wasn't fair. And that's okay. And that's just again, just working through that and de-stressing, getting it out. And if you've got to get it out on paper, you got to get it out. And sometimes I like, some of my art therapy activities look at, did you feel frustrated with this activity? What was that like? Was it hard? Because, crayons are really awful to use for people like me who like to get every detail, every hair on the animal, every crack in the leaf. Crayons are just awful to use in that sense. And so they can bring up feelings of frustration. So and being able to sit with those emotions too is important. Yeah, while you being that mindfulness. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, what an interesting thing. I mean, there's going to be inherent challenges with any art process because it's inherently challenging to express ourselves. Period. Like it is inherently challenging. Yep. So no matter what the medium is, whether it's me talking to you right now or whether I'm drawing that with a crayon, there are going to be those challenges because no medium can combine all of the pieces of what it's like to actually be in an experience. And so I love that because it is that that safe way to experience a frustration and to be able to talk about and process that frustration process in a way that is safe. Like we're talking about crayons, right? So it feels much safer to go through that in real time. Somebody who's watched me do it and then go, yeah, I don't like how that crayon feels, right? I don't like the sound of chalk on this chalkboard, right? So going through those pieces because it is a very safe way to do that because it's not personal. That doesn't feel as personal as when this family member says this to me, right? I feel this way. It doesn't feel as personal. And so it's that great way to be able to have those conversations and do that self-discovery. And also to have the validation of like, I don't like drawing with crayons, period. Like, I don't have to like drawing with crayons. And so being able to say, for people who go to fawning as a coping strategy, right? Or people who go to people pleasing as a coping strategy or as a trauma response, the validation that will come with, I don't like using chalk for this project, right? I like using this or that. Being able to say, I don't like doing this process, or I didn't like this part of taking this action in my art is great because who's to say no to that? It's inherently validating when we're doing it in that safe space. And so I think that is so beautiful and such a great way to be able to look at a process without feeling like I'm in that process. And then also to be able to validate, like, yeah, you don't like that, right? Like, that's okay. That's good to know. Now I know that about you. Now you know that about yourself, and you are allowed to not like things.
Absolutely. I have a lady come to, I run a sort of a community group and at a local, they're called neighborhood houses in Australia. And they're basically for a lot of people who don't quite fit into society. They might be, they're not employed because these are run during the day. There might be all sorts of social and mental health issues going on under the surface. So they're a very open place where people can come. They have, meals, and there's a chat and a cuppa and a chat every morning where people can just show up, non-judgmental. We don't care who you are. And I have run these classes, and one lady, she began by almost arguing with me at every session. And I used to think, you don't have to be here if you don't want to be. She'd show up. And the other week we were doing collage, and I was encouraging them about, I was on this theme of identity, and we had to cut out images from magazines and create a face. And hers was fabulous. And it was all about drawing on what they felt what qualities they had to offer. And she's a wonderful seamstress and loves knitting and crocheting. And she'd created this face. And she'd left early, and she said, "I don't like this activity and I don't feel well. I'm going home." I was, "Okay, I hope you're feeling better." And it was interesting because she'd forgotten to take the piece with her. And I'd picked it up and brought it home, and I'd forgotten. And she'd messaged me repeatedly, "I can't find it. I don't know what to do." And I thought, you didn't like the activity. You kind of complained all the way through it. But she really wanted, and I actually did find it and I've returned it to her. But I thought it was really interesting that she really felt at another level this identity with it, and that it was important for her to, she wants to put it in her journal, and because she wants to keep a record and that sort of stuff. And yet, and another level, she's one of my biggest advocates. She's amazing. But she challenges me almost every week, and I think it's really, really interesting. Yeah.
That is interesting. So you do in-person classes, but you also do groups and classes online as well. Can you kind of explain what your online groups are like and those online courses that you offer as well?
So this year I'm working working in online courses. They will be pre-recorded and offered that somebody can sit down and do at their own pace. So again, we don't have to worry about matching time zones and things like that. So it's pretty much the same sort of thing, where I will ask, give some instructions, and we'll talk about how the client's feeling, and they'll just experience the activity. I find, certainly since we've all gone through COVID and we've all, Zoom is, and all the other different kinds of platforms are, they're just such second nature to people now. So you can actually really connect with someone, even though, like, you and I are, thousands of miles apart. You can really develop a really nice connection with people. So there's not, I suppose the only difference really is, you could do it in your pajamas, perhaps, unless you wanted to wear your pajamas out. That's cool too. I don't mind.
Absolutely. And one of your classes that you are creating is for older women and talking about identity versus roles. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
I think something that's really resonated with me, and I've gone and spoken to women my age, with grandmas, about how they're feeling. And we're still living in a culture where women are expected to give up work or put it to one side, where they're when they become mums, when they become homemakers. Even though I have a son, and he is 100% involved in every aspect of the home life and raising his two daughters alongside his partner. But women, they give up work. They lose, and importantly, they lose access to superannuation, which is compulsory in Australia. When you have a paid job, your employers have to pay into your super fund. So when you get an older woman, where you're actually financially much more disadvantaged than men, there's also a phenomenon now, which I assume is worldwide, but in Australia they've called it the silver splinters, where couples are separating in their 50s and 60s. And so women, there's the highest proportion of homelessness in Australia are women in their 50s and over. And that at a level terrifies me, because I have a home that, and I live alone. But I kind of know that if my health suffered or something happened, would I lose it all? In a year or two, could I be living in my car? Because that's a really, really scary idea, isn't it? That. And so I want to sort of, the courses will be quite affordable. And I just wanted women to begin to reclaim who they are. So we can no longer have children. So biologically, we're not doing that big function that women are supposed to, we're here for. We can't do that anymore. We're no longer physically attractive. Men don't look past us. They can actually look through you at someone behind you and just ignore you in a way that it's never happened before. We're not really respected or valued by community. One of the reasons I love the neighbourhood houses is that you are, because they just remove all 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 those sorts of facades, those sort of social constructs. And so I wanted to look at who are we? Who are we now? If we can't have children, we're not mothers. We might be distant grandparents. Young families are so busy we don't see them anymore as much as we would like. And I know loads of people that literally go move into the same street as their family because they're not seeing their families, their younger families anymore. And where do we belong? Where do we belong? Do we just take up golf? Do we volunteering is a huge thing in Australia. And it's older women that go into the thrift stores that volunteer their time, or they're at the church volunteering their time. But who are we really? And do we have more to offer than just our time and our experiences? And it's just that the courses are developed, or they're being developed to really center on that sort of, what else do I have to offer? Some of these women were nurses, and there's a doctor I know, and yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting that as you age in this community, you are, and in our society, in our Western societies, we don't matter anymore, and that's sad. I think it's sad.
Yeah, no, that is really sad. And that's interesting to think about. I don't think I've ever heard of that phenomenon, but I wonder if it is worldwide, where we are splitting in our older age, and that's the highest like homeless population. I wonder if that's worldwide. I hadn't
I
heard
believe
that.
the homelessness is. The silver splinter concept is something I came across about a month ago, and it kind of, so I'm accumulating all this information and doing all this research. But I can't imagine why it wouldn't be worldwide. We all live, in a very similar societies. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you know when those online courses will be ready for people to start being able to purchase and watch those, or where are we in the like developmental process?
We're about halfway through the first one. So, yeah, I'm hoping end of March, April to get to really get it out. I spend a lot of time usually formatting something and processing it and working it out in my head as well. And then I will end up with a template. And once I have a template, then I can create the information and the content and the activities, and literally just slide it into and it's part of my learning journey as well. So yeah, March, if not March 2025, certainly April.
Yeah, and I know the app is designed for children primarily. Are there differences between how you would do mindful arts therapy with a child versus an adult, or even versus an older adult?
The app's actually designed for anyone. Sorry, I didn't mean to mislead you there, but it's one thing you do appreciate is how you have Amazon and you have Google, and how much like, what's the word? How much the security element or the data privacy elements that's behind apps just blew me away, and how often my app was rejected because it didn't meet these requirements. And it literally, with Apple, for example, it went through an 8-day process where they test every app, and they rejected it. Nope, you've got to do this. And they get to the next, nope. And so there was a little tiny things we needed to tweak to make the app available on Apple. And then we went through Google, and it was a different process, but the result was the same. I've forgotten the question. Sorry.
Yeah, is there a difference between how you would do mindful art therapy with a child versus an adult?
The children are much easier. You can hand an 8-9-year-old, even a 16-year-old, a packet of markers and a piece of paper, and they're like, oh yeah, sure, I'll do this, yeah, and they're off. So they don't have all that stuff, all that negative inhibitors triggering everything they do. And they have, most of them don't live in a world where their confidence has just been slapped down over and over again. Whereas adults, one of the reasons, another reason that I find really interesting working with older women is they have absolutely no confidence in their abilities. which I think is just shocking. You know, they've held jobs, they've contributed to their community, raised families, and they're like, oh no, I couldn't do that, couldn't draw that, you know. And so yeah, whereas the major difference is children will pretty much give it a go, even if they go, oh, I don't really want to do this, particularly the boys. You know, boys are like, you say, oh no, well, you can give it a go, and you know, you might negotiate, and then you can go and do whatever you like to do. Yeah.
And then I know you also write books as well, and you mentioned the pet loss one is one of your big ones, and then you have mindful arts therapy books as well. Can you kind of go over your books and where to find those and what those are all about?
Oh, sure. And again, I just, you know, like not many people have heard of arts therapy. Mindfulness is still a relatively new practice, even though art therapy is over, it itself is over 100 years old. So I wanted to give people something they could try at home in the safety of their home. They might not have the money to employ a counselor or a therapist. They might not feel that it might not, you know, that, oh, I don't know if this is for me. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. So the set of 5 activity books that I started with would basically just designed for people to introduce them to the concepts and help them work through whatever it might be. I'm sure the same as in America as here, there's a shortage of psychologists. There just isn't enough, and that it's very expensive here as well. And so it's something that could fill a gap while they're waiting. It's something that they can support themselves with, just fine tune how they're going. Perhaps one of the things I love about any kind of the arts therapy, whether it's music or art, painting, is sometimes we don't have the words because they're stuck somewhere in our brain. And, you know, we're not taught to talk about trauma. We're not, you know, we're still opening up and sharing our feelings about, you know, about feelings about things. I met this beautiful, I was working with this beautiful woman, and she, you know, she got fed up with her 4-year-old because she'd asked her so many times to get up and get ready for dinner. And the 4-year-old turned around and said, oh, mummy, I think you need to identify your feelings now. And this is like, just, yeah, what? So at least our children, our little Johnny children, are learning to identify. You know, I can hear you're getting angry, mummy. You know, she says, and it's almost like, just wash your hands and get ready for dinner. You know, which is, you know, just that frustration you get as a grown up. You think, what's going on here? And then, well, no. Then she got reminded very, very, very nicely. And I just think, it's just amazing, and that's how the book started. And for me, I just really, I mean, I've written books for over 10 years. They're all available on Amazon, if you just search Mindful Arts with an S therapy. And for me, it's just a lovely way for people to begin to connect with the therapy itself, and just really maybe identify that process, that they don't need to have to be artistic, that this is something they might enjoy. And it's something they can use along with traditional talk therapy, or as well as anything.
Yeah, we had a guest on, gosh, a few episodes ago, but she spoke about how she was incarcerated, and she had young children that she wasn't having a lot of contact with while she was incarcerated, and how she utilized painting and drawing her children at different ages. Because when she last saw them, they were, 8, and then they were 16 when she would see them again, and being able to draw her children. And she had identified kind of what you had identified when you were talking about drawing your cat, because she would draw those fine details of her children's faces, of the photos that she was getting of them. Now they're a teenager, right? Now they look totally different. And being able to draw in those details of her children helped her brain to adapt and understand, and those feelings to come in, to understand, like, yeah, my child is is a teenager now, right? And be able to connect with her children in a way that she wouldn't have otherwise been able to do if she hadn't been doing those art practices while she was incarcerated. And it just really reminds me of what you were saying about painting your cat or drawing your cat all in green, right? Because of those fine details that really do matter, and they really do help our brains to understand what it is that we're experiencing in that moment. And so I just think it's so beautiful, and I'm so glad that you are doing this and that you're doing these courses out
Thank
there,
you.
because like you said, it's challenging there are barriers to counseling, there are challenges and things that we are not able to verbally process or verbally express. And so being able to do those things, just experiencing something in a new way. So experiencing my cat through drawing my cat, or experiencing my cat through taking a close-up photo of my cat, allows us to process that same situation. So maybe we're going, I've told 100 therapists this same story, right, of what happened to me. I've shared it, right? I've told it 100 times. And I know what the situation was, right? I can chronologically explain to you the car accident. I can say I was driving down the road, and then I saw a police officer, and I saw the thing, and the car was coming. And but through mindful arts therapy, we can now experience it in a different way and view it in a different way than speaking it, because we've already spoken it so many times. So being able to draw that in colors or draw it in movement, and letting the movement of the way that we're creating the art, letting the movement be the expression as well. So even with, I think you were talking about ceramics, right, and sculpture. The movement of moving those can really help us to understand physically what we were experiencing in that moment, and help us to fully experience it. And by experiencing it fully, we can pass it through. We can process it through, so that the messages that we were needing to get from that experience, we can receive, and then we can process it through. So I just think it's so beautiful. I'm so excited about the art therapy app, because I think that is just so accessible for so many people that need that support, and maybe have those barriers of like, well, I'm not good at art, or I don't want to show people that, and being able to have that available at any moment is just a beautiful thing. So thank you so much for being here, Susan. I would love to have you back on the show, because I want to hear about your book about pet loss. I want to hear about, there's so many great things that I would love to hear more about from you. So we appreciate you being here so much.
Thank you. It's been an absolute pleasure.
We appreciate it. So your website is Mindful Arts Therapy. And the app is the Art Therapy app, which is
That's
so
right. So look for the coloured bird. The
perfect.
The coloured bird.
And I keep looking at your background. And is your background part of your brand for Mindful Arts Therapy?
The logo is. I'll just turn
Okay.
it because I'm on the screen.
Okay.
Yeah, look, that we art therapists, we do nothing by halves. It's all colours and shapes, and talk about emotional landscapes, and we paint this sort of stuff.
Your colors are,
yeah.
those dots in the background are reminding me of, I mean, it feels like a progression, right? So from left to right, we're looking at yellows and reds, and then we're progressing into those greens, into that right side. And in sand tray, we're looking at left, we're reading it left to right.
Yeah.
And so if we're looking at your background and reading it left to right, well, yeah, that feels like a progression to me. So I just think it's very cool. Wonderful to have you here, Susan.
Thank you.
We really appreciate it. It's great information.
I'm Susan Day, and I need a counsellor always.
Me too.
And I'm Chrissa Hunt.
And I'm Julie Johnson, and we need a counselor.
And so do you.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to the You Need a Counselor podcast. We are so grateful that you're here. Now, we want to hear from you. Text us or give us a call at 515-650-3231. You can also find and connect with You Need a Counselor on Facebook and Instagram. If you've enjoyed today's show, please take a moment to like, review, or leave a comment, as all of these things help others to find and benefit from the podcast as well. If you're in the state of Iowa and interested in mental health counseling or behavioral health intervention services, give us a call at 800-531-4236.